just a quick about me. I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons since about 1978, maybe 1977. I was a little kid in grade school. I've played a lot of games since then. Right now, I'm in a Dragonlance 3.5 edition game. I'm running a Dragon Heist 5 edition game, 5th edition game, and I'm also a player in a Star Frontiers game. I've been using Fantasy Grounds since about May of 2015, and I'm in the tech field as well. All right. So what we're going to get started with is from a player perspective. When I jump in and I start Fantasy Grounds Classic, this is the first thing that I see. Okay. There's a couple of things I want to point out right here in this. And the first is getting started. These red things are actually hyperlinks. Okay. So if you're just getting started with Fantasy Grounds, these are a great place to go to get started. I'll also post in the chat at the end a bunch more stuff. We've got, if you're a game master, we've got the ability to create new campaigns and load campaigns. For everybody, we've got updates that will turn red if there's an update that you need. There's settings where you would go and enter your user account information. Manage characters allows me to access any characters. I can go in and I can create my own rule set, and I can start, and I could go create a character, and then I can import this into any campaign that I play in. Or I could go into a campaign that I've been in, and I could access my characters from that campaign. I can't edit them. I have to export them and then import them. That's changing in Unity. But that way I can access. What I'm going to do is go to Join Campaign. What you're going to want to do is input your username, okay? And then your game master is going to give you a host address. It might be an IP address. It might be an alias for random words, okay? In this case, I'm doing something special here. I'm connecting to myself, and therefore I'm using a host address of localhost. As a game master, this is a great technique. I'm going to tell you one thing. As the username, I have one player who likes to give me a new username every time he joins. The problem with doing that is everything that's been shared with him is shared by username. So he has to go reclaim his player character. He's got to go reclaim his notes, all this mess of things. Okay? So keep your username consistent. I like to use my character name because that way I know what game I'm connecting to. I don't remember people's IP addresses, but I do remember, hey, I'm playing Cerise in my Star Frontiers game. Okay. We'll connect with that. In this case, the GM has put a password on the game, and I do recommend this. The GMs do this. And so Fantasy Grounds is prompting me for a password. All right. Button in lower right. Oh, okay. For the live stream. Sorry, I saw somebody had chatted, and I wanted to make sure to answer that. So here I'm connecting to my own game, and I have to say it gives me a little bit of a concern because I had just connected a few minutes ago, so I shouldn't be having to download things. What was I going to say? So there was something else to manage, get started, join game. Okay. I think I said everything. The first time you come into a campaign, you will see this campaign setup window. This is a great place to, guess what? Links to those guides and manuals, link to the forums, okay? I can walk through this, okay? And after you're familiar with this, you can turn off this show on load. Otherwise, every time you join this campaign, and it's campaign specific, this setup window will come up. It's now going to tell me, hey, you need to load data, right? what do you want to load? You can go into the modules. We're going to get there manually in case you're not there. And we'll talk about that. I could load, hey, I'm going to load the basic rules. I'm going to load the SRD. There are then options. I can go into options and I can set things like, hey, when somebody whispers to me, do I want to get a ding? Do I want to get a bound? Are we manually entering our dice rolls instead of using the Fantasy Grounds 3D dice? Okay. So there's a bunch of options here. Again, these are all detailed in the wiki and the user guide. Okay. And I'm going to finish that out. The next thing you'll notice is you have a character. These are not all the characters in the game. These are all the characters that have not been selected by somebody. Okay. So if the GM is providing pre-generated characters, this is where your pool will be. This is also where you create new characters. I'm going to go ahead and close this. We'll get back to this when we do character creation. Any questions so far? All right, please do jump in either in chat or in voice if you have questions. So you'll notice there's the chat window over here on the left. From a GM perspective, if I have any themes or extensions from the community, decals, things like that loaded, they will all populate in here and it will tell me that. I can type in chat. I can also pull up a list of / commands, chat commands. Okay, so I can whisper to somebody. I can do an out of character message. There's all sorts of things you can do in there. Every rule set will be a little different in terms of what buttons are around. Okay. Down here in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, I've got advantage, disadvantage. I've got plus and minus 2 and 5. These are common modifiers that I use all the time. There's also a modifier box that I can drag modifiers in from my modifiers table. So I can create custom modifiers, okay, and put them in here. Or you can just simply type, hey, I've got +5 on this roll. Okay. Now notice when I drag a dice and put it into the chat box, it will roll in the chat. But if I just drag and drop it on the tabletop, okay, it doesn't. So if I just want to practice rolling, if I just want to play around, okay. Another thing to notice, I am holding down my left mouse button. I can also right-click the right mouse button and notice it increments the number of dice I'm rolling. Okay. Notice the other thing is that modifier automatically reset itself. Okay. And I will tell you, if things are not behaving as expected when I go to target, it's probably because somebody has turned off their targeting. Okay. We'll get a little bit more into that when we get to combat. There's also the ability, if I right-click on a die, I have all sorts of special options. Hey, I want to roll 5 of these dice. So I don't want to pick it up, right-click, and count till I get to 5. I just want it to roll 5. Okay. You'll also notice there's percentage dice. So I can roll percentage. Okay. On the right side are a whole bunch of buttons. Okay. These will open up that PC window that opened up. Anything that the DM has shared with me in terms of stories or maps, and you can see there's nothing shared here at the moment. We'll get into that. The bottom button, this is something you generally will only access a couple of times. So this opens up my library. This is where I'm going to load any information. It also allows me to control which buttons are shown over on the right side. Okay. There's also some quick control buttons up here, and I'm going to do the Create PC button because, hey, we're going to create a PC. I want all the things that are relevant to PCs. when we're done and we go to play, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to set it to play. Because again, I don't need to access backgrounds when I'm playing, okay? But I do need to access spells. The next thing is opening the data. So if I notice right now, I pull up classes, I have no classes to select from. I can't create a character with anything because Fantasy Grounds doesn't know what information I want to use. Oh, yes, the chat window in Fantasy Grounds. Sorry, I get you, Tallin. So all you have to do is unlock position. Okay? And now, oops, I can move it around. Okay? And you can resize it, things like that. I'm going to go ahead and revert it to its default location and lock it back. You'll notice there's a lot of things that I can do with the right mouse button. It's called context sensitive. I need to load a module. So I've got, guess what? I've got a lot of content because I've been using Fantasy Grounds for a long time. What is it I want to look for? Well, if I'm looking for official Wizards of the Coast stuff, I can type in wizard, hit enter, and now only the wizard modules are here. I actually have, as a game master or a dungeon master, I have a lot more than this, but these are the ones that are available to a player. Okay? In this case, I want to load the player's handbook. So I find the player's handbook, I click on it, and it's going to now download all that data from the GM to my computer. So you can see a little bit of difference. I'm going to go ahead and grab, how about, there's some monstrous races in Volo. So we'll grab that one as well as an example. Now those two are loaded. If I wanted to just see my loaded modules, there's a button down here to do that. Okay, and you can search by name, you can search by author. I've now loaded the player's handbook and Volo's Guide to Monsters. They now show up in my library. I can click on them here and I could go to all the classes in the player's handbook. There's other ways to get there, and I'll show you how I prefer to get there. But what's nice about this is the reference manual link. The reference manual for all the FG products, and most of them have it. Some of the very old stuff does not, or some of the stuff that it doesn't make sense don't. But this is where I can read like I could read a book. Okay? So you can make this larger, and I can turn page, turn page, turn page. This is how I can read my book. I actually don't own any hardcover 5e stuff. Everything I've done when I decided to get back into Dungeons and Dragons, I played 4th edition, I played 3.5, 3, 2, 1, 0, right? But when I decided to get into 5th edition, I looked around and I said, oh, hey, look, Fantasy Grounds, it's a good tabletop and it has all the digital books. I'm just going to buy the books in digital form. Okay? And so this lets me read the adventure, read the book, whatever it is. Okay, we've loaded player's handbook. That's the general interface. Now that I've loaded those two, I can close them. I can use these buttons over here on the right. There is, when we go to create a character, I'm going to hit this. There's a couple of things to be aware of. This green icon is always going to add a new one of whatever window I'm in. If I'm a GM and I happen to be in the stories or in the items, okay, I have the ability to create new ones. We can take a look, time permitting, on the GM side of things later. So we're going to create a new character. It automatically claims it for me. Notice he goes up in the right corner. And I'm just going to call him, well, I typoed, so he is now Thur is his name. It's important as to what order you create the character in, okay? And it has to be done this way, but there are a few caveats. One of the most important things is to do the ability scores unmodified for race first. I'm going to, I don't create characters all the time. I'm just clicking in the box, typing in the value I want. Oops, actually, I wanted a high con and a good dex, and maybe he's charismatic. And he's not very intelligent, because I'm going to make a half-orc barbarian. I'm going to go ahead and give myself a portrait. There are ways to get in, so you can get to the folder and you can now, so it pops up and I can add an image to this portrait location for my own character. If the GM has portraits, I can select from those portraits, or I can email the portrait to my GM. These are called token bags. So as I loaded things, okay, I have access to more and more things as I've loaded them. I don't know. That guy, he's now, I have a portrait and I have a token. The token is what shows up on the map. I could actually come down here to my token bag and I can give him a different token. Oops, I missed it when I dragged. So now I have a different token than I have portrait. Okay. I've entered my abilities. Okay. So now what is it I'm going to do? I typically do it in the order, well, somewhat in the order here. I like to do backgrounds next, because backgrounds include specific skills, and I don't want to accidentally select those skills when I add a class. Okay. We're going to say, we're going to use the Outlander. So all I do, notice I'm grabbing the little shield, dragging it onto the appropriate place on the character sheet. FG in the chat is telling me what's happening, what's being built. Hey, it added these features, it added these skills. So athletics and survival, it added proficiencies. We'll get into the other parts of the character sheet in a little bit. And there is, I'm doing tomorrow an entire character creation class, 2 hours. So we want to keep this one pretty straight. So I've selected my background. I'm going to pick my barbarian, and I'm going to just drag it onto the class. Here I have options. So which am I going to pick? Okay. You can click on all of these, and you can get the full information from, in this case, the player's handbook. Okay. One thing you can do with any list, I could click here and just give me the player's handbook entries. I also have a pull down list, so apparently the one I picked didn't have any classes in it. So drag in the class. The next thing to do is the race. Okay. And I was thinking half orc. Let's be stereotypical here. Okay. And so it's added a whole bunch of stuff. You can see some of this stuff is automated. The armor class, the initiative, but things like speed won't be. Dark vision, it gets that from the class. So after you've added your race class, so on, what you want to do is go through and look at each tab. I start at the top and I go through each tab. So now I do skills. Yep, my skills look right. Okay. The yellow star tells me I'm proficient in it. You can click on that and you can make it so some traits will give you double proficiency or half proficiency, reliable talent, not reliable talent, but expert. Okay. So you can change that. You can click on these things and change what they are. Again, by default, the rules are there, but if you guys are playing homebrew, you can click in here and you can put in, hey, I've got a +4 to my athletics because I'm wearing a magical something. Okay. Abilities.
Can you go back to the skills for a second? What's the
Yeah.
little symbol next to the dex in stealth? I've seen that a couple times.
That is armor. That's we used to call it armor check penalty, but that means that will be impacted by armor. So if your armor grants disadvantage to stealth, it will take that into effect.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see if I missed. Nope. Okay. Abilities. What you want to do here is go through and click each one and read through it and make sure you have what you need. Some of them will add actions and some of them won't. Rage is something I can do so many times a day, so I want to add it as a power. So I drag it in here. You're going to actually have to create effects for it. Okay. We'll get into that a little bit. But there's all sorts of resources on the forums. Rob Toohey on the DM's Guild has FG modules of all the effects and powers and everything. There's a whole bunch of them on the forums. There's also a wiki that tells you how to create them yourself. But anyways, go through all the abilities one by one and make sure that it's being taken into account. So while I'm not wearing any armor, I get 10 plus my dex plus my con. In this case, that says, hey, I need to come back here. See the little magnifying glass? It's very faint, but it's there. I can now modify these abilities. My armor class, it gets my full dex plus it gets my con. So it should be, 13 is correct. Okay. So go through all your abilities, make sure one of my choice for languages, okay? So maybe this guy knows Elvish as well, Elven. You'll notice all the languages that I know are down here. I don't know why. Elven must not be. It must be Elvish, right? Oops. And if I do what I just did, which was hit enter, right click, delete the item, it confirms it. Okay. So now I can talk in Orc, and only other players who have Orcish will translate for them. Everybody else will see what it was I saw. Okay. So go through all your abilities. You need to go through your background and add inventory. So if I come to inventory, now I can go to items, and I'm going to type in Explorer's Pack. I'm going to drag it to my equipment. Let's give him, he's got a Warhammer. I'm going to add Warhammer to his inventory. Notice that over here, there is it carried? Is it equipped? Typically, weapons will be equipped, which means when I come to actions, I have a Warhammer attack right here. It's automatically done it. Again, I can click on the magnifying glass and I can modify this. Okay, maybe I have an ability that his Warhammer does slashing damage. Whatever it happens to be, I might have extra damage based upon an ability. Okay, all that type of stuff. So, if I give him a chain shirt, oops, sorry, I'm not on the inventory tab. So the chain shirt, I need to go back and notice it's equipped. In this case, because of my proficiency, did it equip it? No, it's carried. So if I equip it, now the chain shirt is equipped. I need to go back, and now I have a better armor class. But remember, my armor, I actually shouldn't get my con bonus, so I need to turn that off. Okay, the con bonus is only when I'm not wearing armor, right? I think. Okay. There is, so the actions. Oops. Here's the notes tab. I can add stuff. So he's going to be chaotic good. He's going to worship what is Tormir or whatever my god is. I can do all this stuff. We have, if we look in his background, and I forgot to do this. Okay. Under notes, we have, you can, origins, I can roll on, randomly determine an origin. So he's a homesteader. I'm going to add that there. You can see I just dragged it, dropped it. I think the feature is already going to be there under abilities, Wanderer. Yeah, Wanderer is already there. But personality traits. So if I want to roll on personality traits, oops, I should have hit enter there. Okay. So you can grab all this background stuff, his bond. Okay. You can see how I can add those things and drag and drop them. That's character creation in 10 minutes. You can imagine very, very deep. When we do the character creation class, we'll actually all walk through and be creating characters and doing each step. All right. We did loading modules. I'm going to quickly here pull up. Any way to import from D&D Beyond? Yes. So when I come into this character selection thing, there is an import character. Okay. This only imports, it pulls up an import character window. But what I want to do, oops, did I say export? No, import. Where? Oh. There is on the forums, if you search D&D DDB import or character converter, there is a tool that's community developed that will take your URL to your character in DDB, and it has to be a public character. The tool goes out, grabs it, converts it to an XML, and then you can import it. And right now, I'm not sure why I'm not seeing. I know maybe the GM has to import it, and then it's available here. But it can be imported. Let's see. If you're playing with feats, again, I have drag and drop into the character sheet. When you level up a character, I just go back to the main page, go to the class, grab the class. Maybe this time he's going to be a barbarian sorcerer, okay, with wild magic. Again, Fantasy Grounds tells you what's going on in the left. It'll add the ability. You need to go through and make sure everything's there. In this case, I would have to go drag spells, okay, to him. I can pick the source of sorcerer. I can say level 1, and I'm going to pick up Burning Hands, and I'm going to pick up Disguise Self. Okay. Real quick, so the next thing I want to show you. Go ahead.
Oh, don't wait on me.
Oh, I thought somebody had a question. Okay. So there are two important buttons over here on the right that I did not go into. One is the combat tracker. The combat tracker is going to manage all the automation that's going on in your game. The other one is the party inventory. As the DM adds treasure, you can see it here, okay? Coins that show up, so on. There's also this little combat tracker. So I shouldn't say combat tracker. That is the marching order. So as the DM adds things, I can say, okay, where am I right? Where am I on the map? So who's in the front of the map, so on. Is there a watch order? Who's first, who's second, who's third in your nightly watch? Okay. So those two things, the party inventory and the combat tracker I almost always have up. And I'm switching over to the DM. He's going to throw me onto the combat tracker. He's now going to pull up a map. And I forgot what I'm going to do. I'm going to load a map module. Let's see. We'll just pull up the Fantasy Ground battle maps that come with FG. And he's going to share that map with us. It's going to pop up. It's going to download to our computer. It's going to pop up. Okay. We can close it. Hey, I closed it. What do I do? How do I get back to it? Well, we're over in character creation. So now I'm going to go to play mode. Okay. You can manually control which ones, but I'm going to go to play mode. And all the maps that I have access to are going to be here. I'm going to filter for what he has shared to me. I'm going to pull it back up. And so that I don't screw up next time, I've got my hotbar down here at the bottom. Notice I grab that shield. I just drag it down here and put it here. Another thing I might want to do, I'm going to grab my Warhammer. I'm going to grab the attack and put it there. And I'm going to grab the damage and put it here. So now all I have to do is hit F3 and it will roll that attack, or F4, it'll roll the damage. Okay. The hotbar, there's actually a whole bunch of them down here. This is the default. If I hold down Shift, I get another 12. If I hold down Control, I get 12 more. If I hold down Alt, I get 12 more. If I hold down Control, Alt, I get 12 more. Shift, Alt, Control, right? There's whole sorts of, between Shift, Control, and Alt, there's something like 128 or whatever that number comes out to be. And it's per character. If you happen to be playing more than one character, let's go ahead and grab another character. Okay, I can click on the portrait to make that character active. Notice I have different hotbars. Okay, so I'm trying to manipulate here in two places at once. So I'm going to add Fate. The DM is going to then be the one to, there's a whole bunch of stuff here. Okay, so I can resize to a small size, and I can say, okay, notice I'm just left clicking, dragging. Here, I can drag in here and scroll around. I can grab and resize. I want it to be roughly that size. I want it to be this wide, but I want it to scale to whatever the vertical is. Okay, so now I know I'm full screen there. The DM is going to add my characters to the map. Ooh, what happened? I'll tell you what happened. I forgot, as the DM, to put a grid, a 5-foot grid on this map. So let's do that. For reference, 50 pixels per 5 feet is the typical. Now that I have that Fantasy Grounds grid on here, it automatically knows what's going on. Okay, it knows to scale these tokens because they're medium size. If they were large size, it would be 4.
And how did you put that on, or is that for another class?
For another class, but it's right click. If I'm the DM, so this is my DM window, right click, layers, And then there's a grid button that would show up here instead of grid off. So layers, grid, and then I left click and drag. And I know this happens to be 50 pixels, so I want to get it to be 50 pixels. And now the grid's there. There's all sorts of grid alignment tools and things like that that the DM has. Okay. And then as the DM, I'm going to, I don't have any NPCs loaded, so I'm going to go to my modules. I'm going to find the monster manual, load that. And it takes a second to load all that. Now I've got in here, let's find, right, goblins are easy. I'm going to grab a hobgoblin and a goblin. And as the DM, I'm going to add those to the combat tracker. Okay. Put them in grids. Okay. Oh, I did not show them. They were hidden by the DM. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead. There's a couple of things. Notice the NPCs have initiatives. My players do not. So I'm going to add initiative. I'm going to open up their character sheet. I'm going to grab their initiative and I'm going to put it in 1 so I can roll it easily. Okay. Because, hey, if we're doing, you can have Fantasy Grounds automate initiative, but you can also have the players roll it. So if you're going to be doing it a lot, put it on the hot. Okay. So Fate's turn, I can simply, with her being the active character, I haven't put any of her attacks on the hotbar. So she's active. I'm going to target this goblin. I'm going to control left click. Notice that the combat tracker tells me now that I'm targeting her. I could control left click. I can target multiple people at once. I can untarget them. Okay. But we're going to go to Fates. And I can simply, she's got her rapier. So I double click on it here. You can see, hey, I rolled a 1, automatic miss. Well, for whatever reason, I'm going to say, hey, Fate gets a second attack. This time it hit. So I'm going to roll damage for her. I did 11 points of damage. The goblin is now unconscious. And it tells me that, hey, I exceeded by 4 hit points and their status is dying. Yay! And you can also see, depending upon the GM options, I can tell how healthy or dying, what effects are on characters. Okay. And then when my turn is over, I'm going to hit this little down arrow. Turn complete. Guess what? I'm going to drag it to the hotbar because I use that every turn. It automatically goes to the next person in the combat tracker. The goblin dies, so the DM removes him from the map and from the combat tracker. Automatically now it's Thur's turn. It looks like I typed something else in there. So I'm going to activate Thur, and he's got, notice he has nobody targeted. I'm going to target the hobgoblin. I'm going to do my attack. Oops, I clicked twice. Hotbar, you only click once. Well, first attack was a hit, so he's going to do damage. I'm going to ignore the second attack. Did 7 damage. The hobgoblin is heavy now, so I know I've injured him. My turn is over. Again, I'm going to drag that to the hotbar, so next time I don't have to worry about it. The DM is going to do something very similar in targeting me. and is going to attack. I have dice rolls are hidden, so I don't know what he rolled. I just know that he hit me. And he did 3 points of damage to me. Notice my hit points. Okay. This hit points does not count down. This is my total hit points. This is my wounds. When my wounds become equal to, I'm going to just have this hobgoblin do a bunch of damage to me. And of course, I'm rolling horrible until now. Okay. Boom. I'm now unconscious. The hobgoblin knocked me down. Notice the effect on me is unconscious. Okay. The hobgoblin's turn is over. It's Fate's turn. What is she going to do? Okay. I can open up the character sheet and she can say, oh, you know what? I'm going to use my skill, my medicine skill, to try to heal you so you don't die, using a first aid kit, assuming she has one. Oops. So double click on that box. It rolls it. Oh, I missed my medicine check. Well, that's my turn. My turn's over. It is Fantasy Grounds. There's an option to automatically have the death saving throws rolled. You saw that dice go. I think that was what it was. No, because it didn't roll it. It didn't tell. There's an option that is not normally set. That's set. I succeeded on my saving throw, so it tells me that here. Okay. That's combat. I know that's quick and dirty. Again, there's a whole 2-hour class just on combat because you can get really into it. Any questions on that?
Quick one for you. You
Yes.
killed them and you took their token off, the hobgoblin. How do you handle treasure? Can I search the bodies?
So there's nothing in Fantasy Grounds. If I look at, there's nothing to automate that type of stuff. That's like what you would do at the table after the combat. You say to the GM, hey, we searched the bodies. And then he's going to have a story that has a treasure parcel set up. So he may have a story here. Actually, it'd be quicker if I load a module. Let me load an adventure module and I will show you. Well, it's going to take too long. We'll try it. Okay. So as the DM, I'm going to have story entries that tell me things. So this story entry from the DM point of view, these are text bubbles. So I can hit those text bubbles and you can see in chat for a few moments, you can hear the sound of a couple of voices talking over each other. So that's kind of read aloud text. They're going to have links to maps. They're going to have links to encounters, which automatically put the NPCs on the combat tracker and then onto. So if I have an encounter here, it's going to automatically put this guy on the combat tracker. And when I make him visible, everybody will see him. I will also, or I may also down here, have a treasure parcel. So, hey, in this case, the treasure parcel is a table where I have to roll to see what I find. Okay. Or it could just be the DM can say, you found a +1 rapier. So if I add that to the party inventory, okay, I can also control whether or not it's identified. Notice it's not identified. So if I come in as the party, we look, ooh, look, I have a fine rapier. What do I know about it? All I have is it's a well-wrought rapier of superb balance. If the DM decides to identify it, now I get all the mechanics, all the properties on it. Okay. There's a whole lot. I don't know if any of you saw this class from the forums. One of the guys was like, "Oh, there's no way you can do an intro in 90 minutes," and I'm like, "I'm not trying to tell you everything. I'm trying to get you up so that you can start playing, so that you know enough to get in and start looking around." Then we'll get to there's all sorts of resources that I'll link through. So some of those I already had put them. Excuse my dog. He's 4.5 months old, and the world revolves around him, of course. In chat, I put it earlier. I'm gonna. Oh yeah, Merrick, ask a question on voice or.
Sure. So just clicking around through the combat system and putting some tokens on alongside with where I'm seeing on stream here, I did see that for one of the enemies that I just randomly picked, it has pack tactics, and the description describes how there's a bonus involved if it's within a distance of an ally. Or how do I tell? Like, is there a thing I can click in the interface to tell whether things like that are automatically calculated in, or whether I should just be aware that it's a thing that can take effect, but isn't necessarily automatically counted?
Yeah, so Fantasy Grounds, it's kind of interesting that you can see right here, it knows these two are 5 feet apart, but it doesn't automate things like pack tactics. So what I would do is, hey, I know this creature has pack tactics, and actually the combat tracker for the DM has a lot more information over here. Before I roll my attack, I would simply click this button, advantage, disadvantage, and now roll. Why did it not? Hold on, let me, as the DM, where did I put that window? So what I would do is I would simply click that advantage disadvantage button, and I'm not sure why right now it didn't do that for, oops.
But the gist I'm getting, and this is totally fine, is that I should consider as the DM playing around with these things once in advance, just to know in advance what the program will and won't do for me.
Yeah, absolutely. There was another question in chat, and I put in a bunch of links in chat so that you can get that more information. But how do I undo damage? Is I can simply take this damage that where was it? I can simply take one of these damages and drag it and hold. Now, if you notice when I go back to, oh, that's an attack. Say I forgot to target a creature, I can actually just drag the die result on, and it tells me hit or miss. But if there's a damage, let's see, and I hold down control, okay, so again, I'm dragging it. Is it shift? I should be able to simply drag it onto the damage. Yeah. So I drag it, hold down control, drop it on the wounds, and you notice, hey, I accidentally applied damage. Now I can remove it. There are ways to like right click and, hey, give me half the damage. And then I can drag that half damage onto the monster. So that's the material that we have in this intro. So we've got time. What other questions you have? Because I know you've got a ton of questions, and we can show it from the player side, from the DM side.
When's the next DM class?
All right. So if we go to in the chat, I linked to. I know there was one this morning. So if you go to Fantasy Grounds College and go to the events calendar, just events, you can see what's coming up here next. And this one, you've got to subtract your time zone or add it if you're plus UTC. I happen to be -7. Okay. So the DM class there, the next one. So I've got a character creation tomorrow. Okay. Well, we can also look at the calendar in a calendar format. Again, you've got to make that UTC shift because all these times are going to be listed. There is a way to get this to download this into an iCalendar format. Let's see. And you can look through, it looks like, I don't see another DM class. It looks like we might have to put one on the calendar.
That's why I asked. I was trying to look and I couldn't find one.
So what you do in that case, come to the assistance request. Okay, and you can come down here and say, hey, D&D 5e DM class. How to run combats, how to create effects, what is it you're looking for, and make sure you put your time zone in here, Monday through Friday, 5 to 10 p.m. minus 7 UTC. Right. So, and then what happens is we've got a bunch of instructors and we'll go, hey, we've got a request for this class. Can anybody make this availability? Okay. Hit submit request, and then we'll do our best to put together a class that fits when you're available, when you need it.
Oh, okay, cool.
There are also, you saw there's a bunch of stuff here. There's in the knowledge base, there's an FAQ. There's also tutorials. YouTube has stuff. There's actually a bunch of, one thing I think we need to do is get a list of our standard classes that we offer. We haven't put that together yet. We kind of know what it is, but we don't have one for the students to say, oh, hey, these are the classes, these are their agendas. That class sounds perfect for me. But yeah, so some of the links, there's the Fantasy Grounds College here. So we're starting to put up more and more content up here. Oops, I didn't mean to link that. I didn't mean to click that. You can also just search. So I know a few of you are on Unity. People have started putting together tutorials for Unity. Of course, there's the ones from Fantasy Grounds themselves. Fantasy Grounds College, we have a couple up there. Stohove, I'm not sure. I know he's been starting to put a bunch up. Okay. I think those are right now. There's a few others on Unity here. Okay. But there's not a whole lot on Unity yet. Okay. More I don't know if you guys have been to the forums. The user forums are very, very active, very useful. Unity questions right now are best answered here in the Unity playtest. I know we're going to have to get Smiteworks or to redo the forums a little bit and separate the difference between Classic and Unity. But right now, getting a stable product is their priority. At the top under help, there's an FAQ. This is more technical, like customer service stuff. There's the wikis for Unity and for Classic. They have a lot of information in them. Like the Classic, we talked about effects. So there's a whole page with examples for how to code rage, how to do this, how to do that.
Got a quick question.
Mhm.
So aside from maps, there's not that much change on Unity, right?
Yeah, exactly. And from a player point of view, there's very little change. On a DM side, there's the whole ability. So right now for a DM, I can only do some very basic pointers for mapping. It's really pretty, it's atrocious. In Unity, I have the ability to take all sorts of stuff and tile them. And you can see some of those on the YouTube videos where I can build from, 5x5 tiles. I can build a whole dungeon. I can do line of sight. I can take brushes. I can put snow, animated snow effect, all sorts of stuff over the top of it.
Yeah, but that's pretty much only to maps. The overall structure and how you create modules or creatures
Absolutely.
or everything doesn't change much, right?
Right. The fact that there's stories. I'm in the player mode at the moment. Here, let me bring over the DM mode. Almost everything is the same except for those maps and how connections work on the back end. There is technically more stuff on the back end that has changed, but from a user perspective, we don't see most of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have they said whether modules and stuff bought for Classic are going to transfer over to Unity?
Correct. Any of the ones sold through the FG store, they will make sure are compatible. There are a few things that are not compatible module-wise, and that's because Fantasy Grounds Classic, the parser, the thing that reads XML, was pretty sloppy or pretty lenient. It would allow a lot of non-standard things to be done. Fantasy Grounds Unity, because they've purchased that parser, it interprets strictly per the XML standard. So there are some community-made modules that were done not through Fantasy Grounds, because you can code them in a text editor that use some shortcuts and other back-end techniques that are not compliant in Unity, and Unity will fail to load them. But everybody I know, all the developers, community developers I know that have that, are updating their modules to make them work.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things I noticed when I first launched Fantasy Grounds is it was walking me through setting a static IP address and doing port forwarding and things like that. Is that something that all of the players are going to have to do? Is that something just the DM is going to have to do? And how important is that?
So what I'm going to go ahead and exit. So Fantasy Grounds Classic, generally for most people, they can run, and you notice that I exited as the GM, so it kicked me out as the player. If I go to load a campaign, I can run this test. If that test comes back success, you don't have to do anything as the GM. The players never have to do anything, but because you are effectively running a server, a lot of firewalls will have issues with letting people come and connect to you, right? So that's where you might have to do port forwarding and things like that on Classic. But if this connection test works, then your router is already doing what's called UPnP, Universal Plug and Play, allowing that traffic to come in and out. And your firewalls are configured to allow it. If not, then you might have to do port forwarding. You might have to set exceptions on your firewall, things like that.
Does that change? You mentioned that you have to do that on Classic. On Unity, would that make any difference?
So Unity has two ways to make connections. It has the ability to do this direct connect. It also has what they call cloud, which is really just a brokerage.
Oh, I gotcha.
service. right?
Okay, understood.
Yeah, and so and actually that's what they've been having challenges with this week is getting that
Oh yeah, I
cloud
bet.
server. Yeah. All right. So yeah, so there is a community TeamSpeak server that anybody who uses Fantasy Grounds can access and use. I will pull it up here. On the forums, there is a TeamSpeak server that you can use, but you know what? Most everybody now does Discord because it's so easy to set up and run your own Discord server. And I actually have my own for my game, and I can post things outside because Discord is persistent. So I can ping people and say, hey, I've got to work late tonight. We're going to start half an hour late. I can post up stuff. Hey, here's some information about the cost to rebuild Troll Skull Manor, or here's some background information, and then they can go access that anytime they want. Whereas TeamSpeak doesn't really have that. But you can see this goes back 8 years. So Trenlo's been running this for 8 years for the community for free. All right. Any other questions?
Like you said, there's a ton here, but this has been a good intro, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, this was super helpful. Thanks again.
Yeah, and for any of you who hadn't been involved in the college before, you can jump in anytime and ask people questions. One of the main reasons I chose Fantasy Grounds when I chose it was before the college existed, but was because of the community. The community's just exceptionally helpful and friendly. So, yeah, just let us know how we can help.
Yeah.
Thank you. This has been great.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
I agree. Before I didn't know what questions to ask. Now you got me thinking about all different stuff. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, exactly. I'll throw this up. This is again the same stuff that I posted in chat. Here's my email address. I'm happy to help whenever I can. Yeah. All right. Well, great. Hope you guys enjoyed yourselves, and reach out with any questions you have. Sign up for classes. Put in requests for other classes. Whatever it is you need.